Hello, friends. I'm Kush Khandelwal, and this is Ageless Athlete. A few years ago, I started asking questions that would not leave me alone. Why do some people keep pushing mentally, physically, spiritually long after others burn out or break down? What does it really mean to age well when you still crave movement, meaning, and mastery? This show is my search for answers. Each week, I talk to elite athletes, everyday adventurers, and pioneering researchers who are stretching the limits of what's possible across age, injury, illness, and self doubt. You will hear hard won lessons, untold stories, and science backed strategies for building a body and mindset that lasts. For those of us joining for the first time, welcome to the show. For the rest, thank you for joining us again. Time is our most valuable asset, and I deeply appreciate you giving me your time today.
Imagine an island sunrise. The air is sweet with mangoes ripening on the branch, and a lean 76-year-old man is halfway up a tree, barefoot, laughing, balancing a basket in one hand. Now imagine that same man 50 years ago plunging down a thunderous wall of water at pipeline at the north shore of Oʻahu in Hawaii. No leash, no helmet, just guts and talent and grace, dancing switchfoot in a barrel that could swallow a truck. This is Jock Sutherland, also known as the fruit distributor of Oʻahu. He is one of the most legendary surfers to ever come out of Hawaii, a pioneer of pipeline, a child of the North Shore who grew up with spearfishing fathers, anthropologist mothers, and, well, lists on the wall that said, clean a fish, save someone drowning, dance with any age. Yes, Jock had this fascinating list that his mom made for him of skills he should accomplish at a young age. In this episode, Jock takes us on a ride through eras of surf, self-reliance, and soul. We talk about the wild upbringing that made him resilient. We revisit the psychedelic 60s, yes, including acid in the mountains, on the water, and almost at pipeline. We explore why he left the sport at the peak to join the army, what it taught him, and how he reinvented himself with dignity and depth. And we ask what keeps him at nearly 77, still stoked, still surfing, still outpacing younger men with a twinkle in his eye. Folks, as I was having this conversation, I felt transported to Hawaii of this bygone era where everybody lived together, coexisted, and enjoyed the bounty that Mother Nature provided, both on land and in the water. So, yeah, I was kind of mesmerized and transported to that era of surfing, to that era of living on Hawaii. And hope you will as well. So let's visit Hawaii with Jock Sutherland.
Gave me a Yeti cooler that's like a $400 cooler because occasionally I take him some fresh tuna fish or some bananas for his daughter or whatever. And so he lived just down the road. So it's nice up here in Pupukea because we're above the heat a little bit there. There's a nice breeze. I don't know. Have you ever been to Hawaii, Kush? No.
I have. I have spent time at Big Island. Unfortunately, only one trip, but I know that I have more trips. We are recording now, Jock, and I always like to start with this question, which is, where are you right now? And what did you have for breakfast this morning?
Well, what did I have for breakfast? Not too much, but I had enough. A friend of mine who was raised in Japan, he is Armenian, and his father was head of the Associated Press in Moscow. His wife made a wonderful, here's my breakfast. So Eiko Asoyan, she's a wonderful cook, and she makes a wonderful big bread, very dense, but not too dense. It's a sourdough loaf with goji berries and walnuts in there. So it's a goji berry walnut sourdough toast that I cut up into a thick slice, and I had my friend's marmalade, and she lives down the street, and she used to write for the Vogue, the English version of Vogue. Her name is Lady Catherine St. Germain, and her husband was a Lord of Parliament. I gave her some sour oranges, and so she made a wonderful marmalade. So I have my Eiko's goji berry walnut sourdough toast with some nice grass-fed butter and some of Lady Catherine's marmalade. So I have Eiko's bread with Lady Catherine's marmalade.
Sounds
very substantial. But
that sounds delicious. Sounds like you are properly fortified for this conversation. And where are you right now, Jocko?
I'm in my living room. I'm renting a flat above the garage of an old friend of mine who was here in Hawaii, a contractor, Kush, but he came from North Carolina, came over to Hawaii years ago, 40, 50 years ago as a fireman for 25 years or so, and built this wonderful house above Waimea Valley. So I'm looking out over, say, 5 miles of ridges stretching up towards the highlands of the middle of the island, which are not that high, less, maybe 1,000 feet, if that. But also I can look across slightly to the west there's 2 mountain ranges on Oʻahu, and the far mountain range gets less water, but that's important for mangoes to grow, not to have too much water. And a friend of mine, I helped him purchase a 50-acre plot where he has 650 mango trees, as well as other fruit. And so he's been able to take mangoes to the market a couple of weeks ago, like thousands of pounds of mangoes, and they're giving him $4 a pound. And so I take some of those mangoes and I dry them. So maybe we can send you some dried mangoes. As a matter of fact,
oh my goodness,
I have one mango that maybe I'll send you a picture of. It's like 3 pounds. Another friend of mine. So what I've done over the past 40 years, I've been roofing for 50 years. And what I've done is to curry. You like the way the word curry gets in? They said a friend of mine from the Bay Area, a friend of Pia's and mine, he gave me he gave us this book called The New Thing about Jim Clark. It's about the change in the business attitude in America from a solid, proven blue chip stock like IBM to, if you had a good idea, to Silicon Valley. So the change, say 30 years ago, from New York to San Francisco, and the difference in that change in economy. So
it sounds like you have a great view from where you are.
A nice place. It's only about 1,000 square feet, but it's all I need. And Pia wants me to try to rent out a house down the street. Oh, so what I was talking about was being able to curry favor. See, that was the thing about this book, talking about Silicon Valley, is that the smell in the air back in the 80s was of curry because of all the Indian engineers right. But it was about this guy, Jim Clark, who was tired of working for a big company, and they were coming up with all the ideas and making the heads of the company all the money. So he broke away with a couple of his Indian engineers, and they were responsible for $2 or $3 billion startups like Hellscape and companies like that. But it's a very interesting book because it talks about the change in American economy. But for me, I've been lucky enough, because I was raised here since 1952, to be able to, in my working trade, I don't like to charge people too much money because most of my customers are budgetarily constrained. And so I give them a deal most of the time, especially if they have fruit trees that I see they're not keeping up on, banana, avocado, mango, whatever. And so I have probably 20 or 30 people who don't mind my asking to come over during fruit season to be able to get some of their extra fruit. I pick some of their fruit for them. Say if it involves climbing a mango tree or an avocado tree, because I'm still kind of a monkey. Even at 76 years old, I'll be 77 in a couple months, which is a nice age to have reached in the Japanese culture, supposedly. So, but I'm very lucky to be able to have this wet network of kind of a bartering system. I'll bring them the pot, bringing them some fresh fish or whatever I have, and then they let me have some of their fruit, or they give me, like Marchili, they give me some of their products. But so it's a community thing, right? And
I love it. And Jock,
go ahead.
This paints such a vivid image of your life that you have created, and the network and the community that you have developed over the years living in Oʻahu. I believe that
contributes to longevity.
Some people, and some people call you the this one man fruit distributor of the island, and I can see how that reputation came into being. But seriously, I think this talks to something deeper as well about life on the North Shore, about community, about self-sufficiency. And do you think what you have there today, do you think it still retains what you saw when you first moved there and you were growing up, looking out for each other? Friends, it means a lot that you're here. I pour a ton of heart into the show. The research, the interviews, the editing, it's all me, trying to share stories that matter. If Ageless Athlete has ever made you feel seen, inspired you, or just kept you company on a long drive, or better, over a run or a bike ride, I would be so grateful if you considered supporting it. Even a small amount helps keep it going, helps keep bringing the show to you for free. You can chip in at buymeacoffee.com/agelessathlete. Again, buymeacoffee.com/agelessathlete. You can find the link on the show notes as well. Thank you for listening and for being part of this.
Well, back then it was so much a natural part of the community because there was a lot less crime and a lot less population, and it was a plantation community. And so it was very much a working community. When I was growing up, the people that I was friends with were from the various cultures that had worked for the sugar plantation out here, as well as the higher up elevations was pineapple. Down here where we are below, say, 500, 600 feet was sugar cane. And I grew up with the sons and daughters of the manager echelon of the plantation. They were in the minority, very, very small minority. Mostly it was the people whose moms and dads, mostly dads, worked for the plantation. So and at that time, in the 60s, it was mostly Japanese people. Most of my class in my high school classes were Japanese, say 16 or 17 kids out of 25 were Japanese. And then the demographics changed radically over the next 50 years. And so because the plantation shut down almost 30 years ago, so now there's many more Filipinos and a lot less Japanese and more of us Caucasian people. But back then, everybody worked together, and there was no cultural difference or ethnic differences between us because we were all, in the same boat, as it were. And because my dad was a fisherman, and my mom taught swimming here in the community, that we were regarded as okay people. But my dad was mostly out to sea. It was my mom that was doing the raising of us 4 kids mostly. If we weren't home, say by supper time, mom would just go, they're down the street at so-and-so's house, and nobody locked their doors. And so it was very much a social network, not that tight knit, but, because there wasn't any, the plantation in some ways was regarded as oppressive because of the low wages. And then when in the mid 60s, early 60s, the plantation unionized, then the people that owned the plantation didn't like that, of course, because they didn't want to have to pay the extra wages. And so they moved the plantation to either Southeast Asia or to Central America. And so that caused the plantation to close down. But we are trying here in Hawaii to get more agricultural diversification, because it's a very great growing area. It's just that there's a lot. There's cronyism and nepotism, and as there is in most other countries and societies. Very rare do you have it all work so very well. But one bright spot in my life, maybe not so much my life, but in the economy of us here in Hawaii, as well as in California and the whole world, is the efforts of Yvon Chouinard with Patagonia. I don't know if you've heard of his book, Let My People Go Surfing.
I have read the book.
You read it?
Yeah.
Isn't it a great book? And other businesses in our country are going, your child care, this works. This seems to have worked for you. This seems. So there's a lot of other countries that are following suit. And
sure.
Mom was a personal friend of Chouinard's, and she was sponsored by Patagonia for a while. But and we have a nice Patagonia shop here, and they just opened a new one last year in Haleiwa. And so the employees there, I see them out in the water surfing, and they give me friends and family deal when I go over there, and I take down various treats in my dried bananas or dried mangoes. Or a friend of mine makes this. He has a juice company called Govindas, and he makes like a ginger rush juice, that has got lemon and lime in there and ginger. But I try to curry favor with the people at Patagonia so that they don't mind seeing me coming, and they spot me a little bit of swag. There'll be some food products that are like almost going to be out of date. And a couple of years ago, when I was going to go paddle the Molokai Channel, the manager there, Hiromi, gave me some food products, dried bean soup or jerky and some stuff like that. And because it was going to be out of date pretty soon, and they were going to, have to get rid of it. But
Jock, sounds like the community spirit of looking after each other and supporting each other is still pretty much alive, despite tourism, despite modernism. I want to go a little bit deeper into your childhood, and the little bit that I've read, it sounds like it felt like something out of a Jack London novel. Summers with, I guess, the Hermit of Kalalau, and then living off the land, swimming, and catching your own food. What really stuck with me when I was reading was something your mom, Aubrey, did. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but apparently she drew up this list of things.
Right.
Every child should be able to do by a certain age, and she stuck it on the wall. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to read this list I have out aloud.
Go ahead.
Clean a fish and dress a chicken. Write a business letter. Splice or put a fixture on an electric cord.
Fixture, yes.
Operate a sewing machine. Operate a sewing machine and mend your own clothes. handle a boat safely and competently, save someone drowning using available equipment,
right?
read at a 10th grade level, listen to an adult talk with interest and empathy, and then dance with any age.
Right.
So, yeah, is this list correct?
Yes, that was one of the original lists. I can tell by the language it's in there because it evolved to more than like 25 things. But that sounds like it could be one of the original lists.
Did you actually learn all of these skills?
Mostly, yeah. Let's see. Another one that might not, that doesn't sound like it was in there, was to use public transportation to get across a strange city and balance the family finances, balance a checkbook for a month, cook a simple meal, build a fire.
Okay.
Yeah, all those things they're practical things that without which, and 2/3 of those things nowadays, high school, 90% of high school graduates are not going to be able to do, which is not necessarily sad. It's just that they are going to have a harder time. I mean, you can graduate from high school and go to college and have your job in the city and be fine, but the world is a much bigger place, and you need to have a sense of curiosity and a sense of wonder about the natural world as well as the manufactured and the social one.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And even like Hawaii back in the day was different in many ways than the rest of the world and the rest of the mainland. But your upbringing seems to have been more distinct yet. Can you maybe speak to
the difference?
Time. Yeah, the time and maybe this unique way in which your mom, this inspirational, maybe trailblazing figure, raised you.
Hello, friends. Just a quick break. This is not an ad. If you have been enjoying these conversations, I would love for you to subscribe to my newsletter. It is where I go deeper, sharing stories, reflections, and behind the scenes insights that don't always make it into the podcast. I write about what I'm learning from elite athletes and how to stay ageless in body and mind. If you have ever wanted a thoughtful, inspiring read that ties it all together, training, aging, mindset, and awe, you will love this. You can find the link in the show notes or just head to agelessathlete.co. Again, www.agelessathlete.co, that is, to sign up. And yeah, just a couple of emails a month, and you can unsubscribe anytime. Absolutely no spam ever. Okay, back to the show.
Sure. Because she was raised herself, her mother was an outdoors woman, and she was raised with a lot of time in the mountains behind Los Angeles, near Lake Arrowhead, Barton Flats, San Gorgonio. So her mom was an outdoors woman, and so she spent time in a cabin that didn't have running water or electricity, and you learn to build your own fires. For her, that was a key part, even when she came to Hawaii, was having a fireplace, even down by the ocean. And we lived up in the mountains for a while. And so all of us kids learned how to chop wood and lay a fire and, make simple meals. And we didn't have much money, but the creature comforts, because of the way she raised us, we had to learn to make our own meals from a young age. And my younger sister, because all of us kids learned how to cook, but my younger sister, Annie, 2 years my younger, went to France and took a cordon bleu class. And then she came back and was cooking at the Culinary Institute of America. She went through their course, and they liked her so much they had her stay on as part of the staff. And then Ethel Kennedy asked her to come work for her. But so we learned how to be not necessarily just self-sufficient, but also have a sense of curiosity. And because she was a UCLA graduate, reading was very important. Of course, there was no television back then, which meant that it was either the mountains or the ocean or music or reading that involved us, as well as projects around the house. So it was a practical upbringing, but not unintellectual. We were taught that, having a mind that was capable of grasping several intricacies about your surroundings or other people was of ultimate importance. And so that is a very big thing for people nowadays, to have a sense of empathy, as well as, when you're going to a different country, to do some research, to try to understand the other cultures, so that you're not depending on them to cater to you, as an American or as a white person, as it were, because there are so many other cultures and peoples around the world, and as well as history. And she was an anthropologist too. She liked her sense of what had gone before. And so for us kids, it was very important to be able to not only have a sense of curiosity, but have a sense of capability about how to speak intelligently, speak with empathy, converse with empathy, and have a sense of initiative about seeing what needs to be done, and just maybe be aware of a small aspect of a relationship that, if was tweaked or looked at differently, or perhaps contributed to or enlarged, that relationship would blossom instead of lying dormant. And so, yeah, I guess it's a combination of an intellectual development, as well as an underlying a spiritual sense of necessity that gave us kids such a good upbringing, because it was not only the ocean and the mountains, but it also was music and reading and the entire rest of the world.
I love that, Jock. And the other thing that I gleaned from this is, yes, she asked you to master a lot of the, let's say, the tangible life skills, and then also the arts and sciences. But maybe at an even deeper level, she instilled this innate sense of curiosity.
Right. Way important. Yes.
Way important. And it's funny, like even when we were catching up before we started recording, you were asking me all these questions about my upbringing, and it was flattering. And I just felt that, like, you, and forgive me, but even at 77, you still have the same, maybe at least you have the zest for learning and wanting to explore and see new places. It seems, Jock, you took that sense of curiosity in all kinds of directions. I want to take us into that era that defined you and so many surfers. Actually, you helped define that era. And it seemed that you brought that curiosity to the waves. And taking a step back, I have been fascinated by pipeline since I started surfing about 15 years ago. I think at some point, when I was maybe early in my surfing, I had this bucket list thing to surf pipeline one day.
Uh-oh.
And then I started watching the contests, and I started seeing the lineups, and I'm like, what? Maybe I should be content with just going to the North Shore and watching the contest. I mean, even then, that would be something else. Many of the people listening are not necessarily surfers, and pipeline is such a mythical wave. And you were discovering surfing at pipeline as a pioneer. So maybe just to start off with, Jock, what makes pipeline so special?
Probably because of the speed with which it stands up off the reef, Kush, and also the ability, or the shape of the wave offers you a chance to be able to get in the tube. But we weren't riding in the tube all that much. But mostly it was, oftentimes it would be an accident. We'd get in the tube because the wave was so fast it would run past you, kind of a thing. But nowadays it's still possible to get some waves out there, especially if you know the break, as well as I and some other people do. Although the people from my era are not over here so much. There may be only one other person, Herbie Fletcher, who used to surf it with Jerry Lopez and me, comes over, and I talked with him a couple of years ago, and he said, well, my shoulder's kind of bummed, you're going to have to take care of it, for us. But it's a special wave because of its beauty. It can be a friendly place, but it can also be most of the time it's not so friendly. Most of the time, 80-90% of the time, it's not necessarily mean, but as in a lot of things, it seems to have its own personality. And if you get carried away with your own ability, if you have too high opinion of your own ability there, let's say, that it has a tendency to want to act not necessarily capriciously, but as a lesson giving, to you, as it were. But so if you ever come to the North Shore and there's a decent little northwest swell running, you should come surf Jocko's, because you can get tubes there, and it's the lineup is more open, so the crowd factor is way less, and the crowd's a lot friendlier, and it's a good preparation for pipe. But I don't want to compare Jocko's to pipeline, but there's some ways that can be, when the wave bends has a little north swell in it, that it can be that much. It can be very similar to pipelines. There's a fellow from Chile, Ramon Navarro, that I saw get a 4 or 5 second tube ride there, and
at Jocko's.
Yeah, at Jocko's. Yes.
Wow,
beautiful wave. I didn't think he was going to make it, and
sure,
came out the end. But just he's a very capable guy, and he just happened to get just the right wave. And so sometimes I feel that the ocean has almost a mind of its own, and then it will bring you deserve it or an extra special wave.
No, Ramon is obviously, he's a world-class surfer, so maybe it shouldn't be too shocking. And of course, if I make it over to Oʻahu and to Jocko's, I could not hope for a better guide if you happen to be around to help understand the lay of the wave. But Jock, take us to that time. Like, people have been surfing in Hawaii for like centuries,
right?
But
right.
pipeline was still this exotic, impossible dream. When you were looking at that wave, were people already trying to surf that wave? What gave you the impetus to want to try and find your feet at pipeline?
Seeing it in movies, probably in 1962 or 3, but also hearing of it and having some friends of mine from town, because I didn't have a car back then. I wouldn't have for another 3 or 4 years. And they would come out and give me a ride up there. And with the old boards, it was a very steep learning curve. And with the old boards, it was hard to ride. But if you would take off on an angle, there were several techniques that you could use. But for me, it was what spurred me on to go ride pipeline was probably watching Butch Van Aertsdalen in movies, like from 1962 or 3. And I started surfing in, say, 64, although friends of mine have said they took me up there in 63 when I was 13 years old or so, or maybe even earlier. But there was the movies and hearsay and going up there with some friends that were of my age and just trying it out. And so I would say a combination of things, course, that led me to go and try it out. And, after, say, two or three times of trying and wiping out most of the time, then I learned how to paddle, wave choice, paddle earlier, get to your feet very quickly. Try not to go too straight down because the boards back then didn't have much rocker. And so the boards were not lending themselves to being able to ride pipeline very easily.
I can't imagine, Jock, like trying to, like just looking at some of the footage you guys have of like riding pipeline with like those longboards.
Yeah.
No rocker, and the wave is so steep and it hollows down so quickly. Like I have taken out, I'm a very middling surfer, but yeah, I mean, just even at Ocean Beach in San Francisco on waves, much less consequential, trying to surf.
Yeah, Ocean Beach can be very consequential.
It can be. No, again, I'm not there on the biggest days, but that wave can jack up. It can get so steep. And yeah, it's like a lifetime of work to master how to drop into a wave, even with like the perfect board and the perfect rocker. You were doing that. And you were like pioneering that. And how were some of the first early sessions? Like how scary was it for you? You were obviously an intrepid kid, but even for you, like it must have been maybe just a little bit daunting to go out there and try to.
Yeah, because it was much faster than most of the other ways that I had ridden up to that time. I think I had ridden Sunset Beach maybe before that. I was only 13, 14 years old or so, maybe 15. It was pretty scary, and it could have been disheartening, if, you got hit by your board or you bounce off the bottom on one of your first days out there. But luckily for me, I had enough background, enough time in the water so that I figured out pretty quickly, if I'm not going to get to my feet quick enough, or if I'm not going to have the right angle, then I'm going to be wasting my time, or I'm going to get hurt. So I was able to learn, thank goodness, quickly enough. And my peer group, people like Jimmy Lucas, Eric Spangler, Tiki Spangler, guys from town, they were good surfers already, that we were all like 15, 16 years old. And there's one guy that was slightly older, and he could drive because all the rest of us were too young to have licenses. And so it was just a matter of being able to put in the time and be able to get up there and in the meantime surf Chuns and Laniake and places down there where I was.
You were an accomplished surfer, but pipeline is just so much faster and steeper and obviously scarier. Take us to some of those moments, Jock, like some of those, like those early days when you were like paddling out and trying to drop into one of those like colossal bowls. How did it feel to be there at that moment, with the wind, with the wave beneath you, with your heart going like, would love to kind of hear it from your words.
Well, at first it was pretty scary, and we just tried to do our best not to get hurt and to try to learn a little bit. But then after a while, I'd say a year or two, then it became much easier to try to not necessarily play with the waves, but to get further back in, get as close as we could, be more comfortable to the point where we were having fun instead of just, holding our butts as it were. The learning curve, although pretty steep, once you got over the early difficulties, it became more a matter of timing and picking the right wave and having your friends out there pushing you so that you would try to do more risky things on the wave. But there was still times when everybody else would be too tired and you have to go out by yourself and it'd be 6 feet imperfect. But the really big days didn't come until, say, I was 16, 17 years old, and I had better equipment. But the early days probably lasted about a year or a year and a half, and then the boards got better, and then our ability, because we got stronger and we got more adept, we got a little bit more able to see the waves coming before they got to the point where we wanted to take off on them.
How were you preparing yourself? I mean, I'm guessing you were obviously surfing all the time.
A lot.
Were there any other like modalities that you were tapping into even back in those days, like with
diving.
I don't know, exercise or
Dive,
diet or
yeah, skin diving was one that we did do during the summer, and also going up in the mountains, to not necessarily just harvest fruit, but to go hiking. Mom would take us on the along with the trail and mountain club over here. And at first we thought, oh, when you're 7 or 8 years old, oh, this is going to be boring. This is going to be, this is not going to be fun. And then after a while, we were like, oh boy, we're going hiking again. So your attitude changes once you get exposed, and once you have the right tools and the right preparation given to you by an adult who is wise in the ways of where you're going to go, and not to let you get too carried away with your juvenile sense of disappointment and having to do something that you don't want to do, you think is not going to be fun. It turns out to be great.
Yeah, interesting segue about your mom. Again, like your mom was breaking barriers in all her own ways with her adventures. How did she take on to your surfing obsession, and maybe in particular trying to surf pipeline?
Well, I think she wasn't there with me during the early days of surfing pipeline. I think she maybe had seen a couple of pictures in the movie. She didn't come to too many surf movies, so I don't think she watched me too many times. Maybe at some surf contests, the early Duke contests in 1966. Maybe it was the first contest that she saw of me, but there was other smaller contests. And so she knew that I liked surfing, and she did not discourage my surfing so much, except when it interfered with my schooling, and which it actually did at one time, because I wasn't applying myself. And so she had to hire a tutor for me because my mathematics classes were not going so well because I wasn't putting in the time. So I was lazier. I was too juvenile in my attitude about how valuable school was. I was too. What's the word for when someone is? I'm searching for a word that's is like juvenile, but anyways. So yeah, I was
like rebellious, maybe.
And yeah, not necessarily rebellious, because Mom could be she realized early on that she was going to have to be the authoritarian, the disciplinarian. She would have to wield the belt if I transgressed too much. I had to take my punishment from her. And she was a strong woman, so she wasn't afraid to dish it out. And at one time, I had been cutting school. I'd been ditching school, and I got caught. And she told me to go get my surfboard and then go get the axe for chopping the firewood. And she told me to chop my surfboard in half. And so I, no. So she grabbed the axe out of my hand and she proceeded to chop the surfboard herself. Which,
wow. Oh my gosh.
About 15 years old. I don't think 16 yet, but I learned a lesson that way. But she said that it didn't really matter because Dick Brewer made me a new surfboard in the next couple of weeks. So I was back in the swing of things. But she was very disciplinary. But because surfing was a big part of my life, probably because my father was a surfer in the late 30s and 40s, and he was from the early days of the heavy redwood balsa surfboards with no skegs on them, 14 feet. And my son has a picture of those old boards, and so I'll send you a picture of that. But so it was in my DNA, but also he made me a redwood board, no, balsa board, when I was 13 or so, that I learned on a very rudimentary board with no rocker, just belly. And so it was like a pipo board, and then he glued a piece on. So the whole board was like 7 feet long or so. But it was very, very tough for me to ride, which is good because you learn, very early days. But my mom did not discourage the surfing, but she just wanted it not to become the do-all and end-all, because there were more important things in life, like education learning a trade and being cognizant of dancing and the arts as well as sciences. The sciences were very important. I wanted to be a marine biologist when I grew up.
Yes, your mom certainly had high expectations of you, just like maybe most moms would, but maybe her expectations were in some ways even
Sure.
deeper and wider. I mean, like she wanted you to master all of these different competencies.
She was a linguist too. Her degree from UCLA was in foreign studies, but she realized when she got into the education department for the Army, she was at Tripper Hospital and then at Schofield, helping GIs get night classes and credits from the university, that her degree in foreign studies was not going to be applicable for what she wanted to do. So she went back to school when she was in her 40s to get her master's degree, to change her degree, which is very admirable for an older person to sit in.
Incredible, yeah. One other small tangent from those early days, both growing up with that household and your mom, and also Surfing Pipeline. If you're open to talking about it, I was reading that you attempted to surf Pipeline. If you know where my question is going, under the influence of acid.
No, that was a fabrication, even though by that time I had already not experimented, but I had tried acid and surfing, and I found it to be pleasurable as long as you have the proper environment with which to start off your day. Paul McCartney was given acid by John Lennon, only it was late in the day, and that's not something you want to do because it's your normal sleep time, but then you're all fired up, and so it was not easy for Paul to cope with that. But I have a great book of his. If you ever have a chance, it was put out by McCartney Publishing. It's 1,500 of Sir Paul's songs and all the backstories. So it's a twin volume. You're probably familiar with the Oxford English Dictionary, the OED, and the two set, the big old with the magnifying glass on it and everything. So Linda Eastman, who was American, his ex-wife, her nephew was a surfer and met a friend of mine in Australia. And the friend in Australia, Jack McCoy, surf film guy, he said to Hugh Eastman, "Hey Hugh, you should check out my friend when you're going back through Hawaii and have supper with him." And so we did. And about a month later, this big book comes, and it was part of it was the 1,500 of Sir Paul's songs. But so the acid, the surfing on acid. I don't think I ever surfed Pipeline on acid, because you'd like to be open when you're on acid, just like any other consciousness expanding material, whether it be a runner's high or a surfer's high, or using chemicals like mushrooms, or even a good strong cup of coffee, say, to alter your consciousness. But oftentimes you don't need any of these things. There was an interesting program that my girlfriend Pia and I saw about 10 years, maybe 15 years ago, called Fierce Grace, about Baba Ram Das, was Timothy Leary's sidekick, Herb Alpert. And he is in India, and he had brought a bunch of acid with him, and he's on his way to see a guru. And the night before he's going to go see the guru, the Swami, he is thinking about his mom, and, worried about her, concerned about her, feeling for her. And the next day, when he's got these hits of acid, 10 hits of acid or 20 hits of acid or something, and he comes to see the guru, and the guru tells him, "You were thinking about your mom last night, weren't you?" So the girl was very prescient, and Herb Alpert's going, wow, how do you know? And the girl said, do you have something for me? And so Alpert gives him the acid, and he takes like all 10 hits, right? But there's no change in his attitude. In the movie, it shows him, looking, oh no, what have I done to my friend, the guru? But there's no change. There's no change in the guru's consciousness because he was already there, as it were. He was already connected with the rest of the universe. But it's a great movie because it talks about the background of Herb Alpert in the early days in Harvard, maybe in the early 60s or so. But I was lucky enough to have good people to prepare the beginning of the day. We would take our acid, my friends, my young friends, guy friends, and I would take acid early in the morning. Then we'd go up in the mountains and we'd run around the mountains, for half the day, and then we'd come back down and then go surfing. And so that was the good way to be able to have an acid experience that involves surfing, would be to have a good preparation first. You don't want to do it, say, in a car going somewhere. You want to have because the acid will open your mind to the wonderfulness of the natural world, so you don't want to have the constriction or the impediment, the obstruction of being in a place that's not so natural, like a car, or being in a situation where there are bad feelings. You want to try to have everything be potentially expanding of your own loving ability as a human being that's connected with the rest of the world, the human world as well as the natural world.
I am not admitting on ever having. But
you don't have to.
But I would say that the idea of driving an automobile,
Right.
in this country feels dangerous enough.
Dangerous.
Like it sounds. Driving on acid, if anything, if there's anything to me that feels more dangerous than trying to surf pipeline on acid, it's probably trying to drive on an American highway on acid. I don't see that happening.
No,
for me.
But mountain climbing, say, if it was not too difficult of a climb, you could probably do it. And as well as if you were familiar with the route and you were confident enough, but still, because if there was anything else in what you did, the previous day or that day, or if someone else felt that you had wronged them, if there was any detractions or possible dangers in the atmosphere, or it doesn't have to be in your own interpretation. Maybe there's something outside of you that would come and affect your, not necessarily.
The thing with climbing that I am a little bit nervous about is because you have to make these sort of. It can be very safe, but it can also be high risk if done incorrectly. Like if you mess up the knot,
right,
and if you mess up like the way you clip the safety gear as you're going up. However, I am certainly, you have gotten me intrigued on trying to surf, more humble waves, waves of lesser consequence, maybe like your, I don't know, like some of those rollers at Waikiki or similar.
Right.
Anyway,
like
we'll have to come back, Jock. And you have triggered my imagination. Jock, moving on. One part of your journey, which I'm very curious about, is you quickly rose through the ranks and you were at the top of the pyramid as a surfer. You were the number one in the world, according to popular rankings.
Right.
And it seems like you chucked it all and you enlisted in the army.
Right.
And that's not something most people, definitely not most surfers, would do. And is that, again, like you exercising your insatiable appetite for curiosity? Was there something different and deeper?
It was a combination of things, Coach. It could have been a disappointment, a frustration with the way schooling was going, because just like when I was in high school, when I was in junior community college, that I wasn't applying myself to the difficult classes like higher mathematics and physics as I should have, to be able to get to the point where I could get myself on the right track to get a degree in, say, marine biology, because there was potential opportunities for me with the people, say, at Sea Life Park or in the university, the Institute of Geophysics there, where there were some friends, older friends that were also surfers like Ricky Grigg. But because I was also not that happy with surfing in contests, maybe I was probably too impressed with what reputation in the surfing world had brought. To that point, I could even make a little money off of it, but mostly I was in it for fun and for recreation. And maybe when there was expectations of me, to be in contests, and when I started seeing more of myself in surfing magazines, then there was a sense of, okay, there's an image here that apparently I have to live up to. But for me, because my mom worked for the Army, and because my dad was in the Coast Guard, and because a lot of the friends, a lot of the people that I knew, not only in the North Shore, but on Oʻahu, were connected with the military, I didn't feel it was unfamiliar territory, but I knew that Vietnam at that time was not perhaps a good thing to be in, but I probably felt that I could maybe change things from within. But maybe I just felt that it was a job to go to, because I was not tired of school, but I wasn't doing so well in school. And so in late 1969, when I was towards the end of my second year in community college, I had spent some time on Maui I took a college over there, the community college. But I felt that, contests are fun, but maybe there's too many expectations of me. But when I looked at what my dad had done and what my mom had done, the military wasn't that unfamiliar to me, and it didn't seem to be that it was going to be that risky. I didn't, in retrospect, think things out too well as far as the potential for when I would go to Vietnam that I would be killed. And also, it wasn't a very good thing for a country to be in, as almost all wars are, and especially one like that. And even consequently, our intervention in Afghanistan, we were there for 20 years, and we were always saying, their army is doing well, we're doing well, we're on the verge of success. When in reality, it was a big theater, and people just wanted to get more money, and it wasn't a very realistic thing. The people over there knew that we wanted to try to help them get more fresh water, more electricity, improve their infrastructure in their lives. But the way that the bureaucracy on both sides was working, it was like doomed from the start almost. But so it's a tragic thing for mankind to continue to do. We haven't learned from history. But before I joined the military, Kush, there was in the surfing world, people from Don James's era and my dad's era, it was regarded as an honorable thing to do. And things, of course, from 1955 to 65, things changed a lot as far as attitudes toward the military. But because I've been raised with the families of military people, I felt I was familiar with the military enough, and plus I had become comfortable with using weapons, to go hunting and stuff like that. So I figured, if I go down to Vietnam, then I'll be okay down there. And I thought, I was very idealistic, and I wasn't thinking very clearly about what could have happened. As a matter of fact, what looked like was going to happen in early 1970 was that they were training me as being a telephone pole climber, a field wire repairman. And so if I had gone to Vietnam, as a field wire repairman, there's a very good chance that I would have gotten killed climbing up a telephone pole trying to repair wires that had gotten cut by our enemies, as it were. But so I'm very lucky because a friend of mine who was a surfer was in the training affairs branch there at Fort Ord, where I was taking basic French sentence with San Joaquin Valley. And he was able to, with help of his boss, change my orders from being a field wire repairman to being a company clerk at Presidio of Monterey Language School there in Pacific Grove in Monterey. So Frank probably saved my life. And
Sure.
it's lucky for me that things turned out that way. But otherwise, I did have a chance 20 years later to meet the fellow that I had shared a bunk with in basic training, a Japanese fellow named Ernie Fuketa from AIA. And I saw him at a contest, a paddle race in Waikiki. And I'm going, Ernie, God, hey, and turns out that a lot of guys that were in our basic unit went to infantry and went down to Vietnam and got killed. So in retrospect, it would not have been a good thing for me. It would have been a lot easier for me not to have joined the military, to have thought a little bit more about potential consequences, and to perhaps, if I was not able to handle school that well, to take a couple of gap years and to go and work in a trade, which is what I did when I got out of the military. I had a lot of friends working in the roofing trade, and they said, "Hey, come work roofing with us." And at that time, I could have maybe gone to Sea Life Park to work, as a janitor, as a pool scrubber, as an animal feeder, or whatever, and didn't do that. So I was very fortunate, and I seem to have had a couple of almost predestined breaks in my life, good fortunes, and it could have had something to do with having been raised by a loving, capable woman, who created good karma for us, if you will, for all of us 4 kids. Most of us turned out okay, but we have our weaknesses. My brother and my 2 sisters and I all have our weaknesses, but we're doing okay at this point. I'm the actual black sheep of the family because I never graduated from college, and so I'm the only guy. So I'm the dummy in the family. Although I will play Scrabble with any of them for money if they want. But anyways, so it's fortunate for me that I was raised in a small community, so I had the good values of a small community, and I had the good values of parents that had talents, and they imbued me with a sense of value for those talents and for being communicative to people in my community and being able to go fishing. We used some of my dad's fishing gear from when he was a fisherman in California. Here in Hawaii, that was valuable for me because being able to get your own food, grow your own food, or go out and catch your own food are very important things. And my 2 sons can do it to a limited extent. My older son works at a restaurant in town. He's risen through the ranks over the past 30 years. So from being a dishwasher, now he's manager of a restaurant in town called Nico's. He was manager of Chris Steakhouse and Roy's restaurant for a while. So he's okay. And my younger guy, who was national amateur champion, he's like 18 years old, as a surfer and as accomplished aerial competitor. He helps me roofing, and he and I are going to go to Mexico next week, which is going to be great. But anyways.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about your Mexico trip in a second. Thanks for sharing some of that background with some of those decisions that you made, including the one to join the army.
Right.
And of course, you have made some dramatic pivots. You left surfing at the top, you joined the army, you came back, and you kind of stepped away from surfing and you pursued this different line of business. If you think back, Jock, what did maybe some of those pivots teach you about identity, about what it means to be successful?
Well, I think it was part and parcel of the way I was raised, Coach, because the world is a great place to live in although it's a harsh place, oftentimes it can be a very rewarding and joyful place to be in. And for me, if there's one thing I learned in life, it's that the human experience is a good experience, and that when bad things happen, that's oftentimes that what the media concentrates on, because bad things are unusual, basically, because the human experience should be a good experience. But by making these changes, it's just maybe part of my life that was not necessarily. I'm not too big of a believer in destiny, although I believe in the connectedness of the universe. Say people like Alan Watts, that he wrote a book called Joyous Cosmology, and there's wonderful rewards to be had out there with your fellow human beings and with the natural world, which we are not doing too well with preserving right now. But I'm lucky to have been able to have made bad decisions and come out of them okay, learn from them. And that's, I think, due mostly to my upbringing and to the people that I grew up with. But as far as the surfing, as far as being at the top of surfing, oftentimes I look back and I knew early on when I first started getting my picture in a couple of surfing magazines, oh, that's great, but the community is more important. And surfing as a job, this actually is important to touch on here, that I could have made surfing my life, but because if you make surfing a business, that means that you be out in the water thinking, well, I need to sell my product, and so therefore I need to tell people that I'm out in the water, but never mind the other guy's product, buy my, so because surfing, I already realized since I was, 15, 16 years old, that was something I really loved, but I wasn't willing to make the sacrifices, put the time in, say, in schooling, so that I could get a degree, so that I could have a good job, so that I could be able to continue to surf, but yet still make some money. I could have made money at surfing. Nowadays, there's people like Tommy Carroll and Tommy Karn that can make money off of surfing without surfing a contest. And I was with a couple of companies that I was making money from at the time in the 60s, but it wasn't anathema to me to make money, but it wasn't something that I wanted to do for my life. And I figured that was something that I knew intrinsically by the time late 1968, 69 came. I wasn't suffering from ennui in the surfing world, so to speak, because it was great, because there's no leashes back then. So people were helped still. A sense of, in contest, sense of sportsmanship. If somebody lost their board, you try to go help them. You didn't go, oh, never mind, I'm glad he wiped out, that kind of thing. There wasn't a dog-eat-dog kind of an attitude, which oftentimes in surf contests nowadays you see so much. I know some of these guys who are involved in the contest, and I also know people like Cole Christensen, who are mostly free surfers, and they have their own families, and so they who are my son's ages or younger, like Mark Healy, they realize from whence I come. And so because they have their own talents, I'm an admirer of theirs, and they are somewhat an admirer of my longevity and my sense of happiness with having a trade, as well as being able to have time to surf with my kids and with them, the rest of the surfing community. So it appears that I've done okay. I've gotten over a few bumps in my life, but it's something that I feel that I could have done, become part of the surfing world as a life, but that it wouldn't have worked out well for me because of the not non-humanitarian parts of being
Sure.
as a commercial aspect. But anyways.
Do you think that if your mom was to come down and learn about what you have accomplished, Jock, she would be proud of you?
For the most part, but there's still big questions. And I feel that she is part of my world still in a tangible manner. Stars, for one thing. I have a personal belief that our ancestors, as do many cultures in the world, that our ancestors are not necessarily, they're gone in their physical shape, but they're there in the trees or the wind or the stars, and that you can still contact them, because I think Mom felt that time is fluid, and that if there was some incident in the past that you wanted to go back and relive, or do you want to go back and fix or change, that you actually could almost do it by treating time as a pool and diving in and swimming back to that time in the past and being able to relive it, reenact it, or re-experience it. So I think that, like many cultures in the world, Japanese culture, maybe the Indian culture, most other cultures in the world besides modern Western cultures believe that there's very much a sense of your ancestors being with you, and that even in a very physical sense, people that in a moment of duress or inspiration, all of a sudden you have this talent or this ability that you weren't trained to do, but maybe people that were 2 or 3 or 4 or many generations before you had the ability to do, and all of a sudden you have that ability to do that, and why should it be strange?
Sure. Do you think, Jock, that, I mean, from all accounts, you have had this life well, richly, deeply lived, but
Not
is
yet
there something,
to do.
is there
Yeah.
something still unfinished for you? Something
Yeah.
you are still learning or
Yes,
choosing?
right, because it's very true that the saying that the more you know, the more you know you don't know. So if to be able to, like, there's a lot of people, and you hear about it a lot. They work for 30, 40 years at some job, like a physically trying job like construction, being a carpenter or a roofer or electrician, plumber, whatever, what have you, an engineer even. And you get to retire, and then so you want to do what you're going to do, but yet, because of the big change in the energy in your life, 3 or 4 years later, you die. I like to feel that there's a lot that I haven't accomplished yet, and there's a lot of things with my 2 sons that I've not done yet, and so there's a sense of unfinished business with both my sons as well as myself, and I'm glad I'm on good terms with my ex-girlfriend, who was a plumbing contractor and a horsewoman and a musician, and my ex-wife. Luckily, I'm on good terms with her, and so it's nice still to have a cushion there to be able to want to continue to strive and to accomplish things that are as yet not accomplished, not finished, and so I've got a lot of work to do, and some people have told me, probably 10, 20 people over the past 3, 4 years that they said, "You're not still on the roof, are you, Jock?" I go, I kind of hang my head a little bit. Oh, well, yes, I am. But there's people, well, like my mom, I say, well, my mom was paddling, Alaska when she was in her 80s. And, so why should I, stop roofing? But on the other hand, my girlfriend's going, my girlfriend's brothers were telling me, get off the roof. And I can, I've actually made some money by analysis and consultation like that. But there's light stuff that I can do, like coatings. I don't have to be climbing on A-frames. But it's nice to be able to do that stuff. I just need to keep the body in shape by doing more biking. And there's a foundation class that I go to. It's kind of like a qigong, kind of a shiatsu class, and it teaches, it's a stretching class, and so I've been going to that for the past 4 or 5 weeks, and I feel better the next day. And so I look at people that I admire that are of my age or slightly younger that are in very good shape. And my girlfriend goes to a workout at the YMCA, and she walks like 2 or 3 times a week, a couple of miles on the beach down there in the Hawaii shores. And so she very much wants me to continue to go to these classes. She's happy that I'm going to these classes, but I need to be able to, I joined the YMCA up here. And so I need to be able to do weights so that my body can be in good enough shape to, like her parents were in their 90s when they passed away a couple of years ago, and they would be hiking because they were German Jewish people, and so they liked outdoors, and they would go for trips to Switzerland and to Germany, and Dad would bike. The dad was a physicist and Mom was an artist. They were both Berkeley graduates. The dad actually taught at Berkeley, so they were very intelligent people. And my mom, when she met them, my girlfriend's parents, she was going, "Hi, these are great people. I don't have to talk down to them." So it's nice coming from and being surrounded by people. And a lot of Pia's friends are doctors, the husband and wife team are radiologists and rheumatologists. And so she has very intelligent, very artistic friends. And so it very much behooves me to want to maintain some sense of alacrity and enthusiasm for continuing to learn and to continuing to develop as a human being.
Beautiful, Jock. You are outliving or outsurfing many of the people you started out with. You're still out there surfing. And
right,
you pointed...
Yes, that have said, he's older than I am and he surfs better than I am. They're upset.
And, yeah, exactly. Like you're surfing better than people a lot younger than you. And you pointed to a couple of things already. You are still getting after it. And you obviously, I guess, this zest for learning and curiosity, it seems like that has also been so important to you. Hopefully. Anything else you can point to, Jock? It could be around sleep, maybe something else about your diet, maybe supplements that have helped you. Yeah.
And be improvements there, not only in my sleep habits, like getting more sleep, like not eating too late, say, and doing stretching in the morning. There's some small qigong exercises that a friend of mine who is a kung fu guy has taught me, as well as there's isometrics that a physical therapist friend of Pia's and mine, a nice gal, Stephanie Hoffman, who's also a surfer, have taught me. And so there's all these things that are important to be able to maintain a sense of physical flexibility and physical liveliness that I need to continue to follow. But there's also things that are being discovered, like a friend of mine who used to work for the World Surfing League a few years ago named Sean Wingate. His wife is Thai, and her friends in Thailand set him up less than 2 years ago with these ancient Thai herbs that are wonderful and non-drug, although that their effect is like drugs. They're like, say, Ozempic or something like that. They're anti-inflammatory, they're analgesic, they help stimulate the nerve endings of your connective tissue where there's not much circulation, like your ligaments, cartilage, tendons, muscles. And so for me, since I started taking them, my pop-up, to get on the board, to get to your feet standing, which is very important, and which causes a lot of older surfers not to be able to surf anymore because their knees are hindering them, either from lack of exercise or whatever, injury. And these herbs, they're called ancient Thai herbs. I'll send you the blurb that I have of them. There's probably 120, 150 people, Kush, here on the North Shore that are taking them. And there's 95% of the people that had shoulder problems, knee problems, back problems that have gotten relief. 3 of my friends, including this fellow Sean, who had sciatica, he has taken, but he has also had back operations. And I just saw Tommy Carroll's brother Nick up here because he was attending about a month ago the memorial services for Clyde Aikau, who just passed away about 2 months ago. And I said, "Oh, Nick, how's your brother Tommy?" And, "Oh, he's got some nerve, this and that." And so I sent Nick back with a package of these herbs, about a month's supply of these herbs. And so Sean Wingate just showed me a little blurb that Tommy had sent him, showing him the package that Nick had given him. And so there's Wayne Lynch so I'm becoming somewhat of a therapist in my old age, as well as trying to take care of myself. There's these people who go, oh, wow. Like even in a couple of hours, we don't have, quick segue here, we don't have a complete lab breakdown of these herbs yet, but because they are being used by so many people, if you don't drink a lot of fluids with them, you can get cramps because they'll dehydrate you. So like last night, I had a good cramp in my left calf, and I don't hydrate it nearly enough. But these herbs are a big help. And do you have any little aches and pains? How old are you, Coach? Like 45, 50? Is that
I am 47.
47?
I'm 47.
Oh, good guess then.
Yeah, you guessed great. And great, let's say, astute question, because honestly, that's part of the reason why I began this podcast, because I started getting hit by aches and pains and frozen shoulders and all kinds of things in my lower 40s. And that's why I was looking for answers. So yeah, I absolutely have those things. And
good.
I am open to trying almost anything to before I have to go under the knife, so to speak.
I will send you a picture of the drug list of what the drugs do, and a synopsis. So it's a list of the drugs, some of the scientific names for them, and because 90% of the people that have been taking, 95% have been taking them. Like Pia said, it didn't do anything for her, but and her rheumatologist and radiologist friends, that one of her best friends that goes to high school, say, we've seen these things come down come up all the time, where people, there's miraculous things that happen, but oftentimes there's like steroids in them or something like that. But because these are from Thailand and they're ancient Thai herbs that you think, okay, you like to think, that they're non-addictive, and they're non-invasive. But a friend of mine who used to work on Baywatch, he was a captain of the lifeguards in Los Angeles. He had some heart issues, and he took my list, the listing of the breaking down of the elements in there and what they do to his pharmacist. And he said, well, they will tend to deplete the enzymes in your liver a little bit if you take that. But for people that are healthy and like me, surfers, ropers, whatever, they would be fine. But for him in particular, although my friend Sean knows that I have people that are skeptics and we need to have an analysis, and he hasn't been able to get the analysis from the people there in northern Thailand. But he says that as far as the guy is concerned, he wants to make a business out of it because he's seen that it can help a lot of people, and some people in just a couple of hours, like 3 or 4 hours after they take them, they have relief. And
wow.
Oh, I can see what it did to my son and how it helped me, and how other people, just 2 nights ago, I had a friend that was a bartender that said he had sciatica, and I gave him 2 little packs, and he's going to call me up right afterwards because he wants a couple of months supply. And it's like $2 a day. If you're taking 2 packs a day, I only take 1 for maintenance. And that seems to be helping me. I notice a little bit, and for a lot of people, if they stop taking them, some of the symptoms comes back. So you have to figure, okay, these herbs are a help, but you need to augment them conscientiously with your regular isometrics, your exercise, your workout, your program, your surfing, your swimming, diving, whatever else you do. You need to not depend on them, as in most things. You can take
yes.
it with it. Yes, but anyway, I will send you a small pack of these, and then we will see.
Jock, one thing about you that I love, when we were chatting and just earlier in the conversation, you were sharing a little bit about your upcoming trip to Mexico to surf.
Right.
And I just love that because, you have been surfing for
60 years.
So many decades. Yeah. And you have surfed all kinds of waves. I can still feel you light up as you think about this trip coming up. So what is it about this adventure that is still so exciting to you?
Yeah, it's knowing that, as opposed to 50 years ago, that we have the ability. My friend Roger Hines, who is an old-time saper, along with my friend Dennis Choate, who are going to be my host there, you can predict the surf almost 2 weeks out, 2 weeks away. And so for the past 10, 15 days, he's been looking at the surf forecast. And now it appears that at the end of next week, when we first get there, it's going to be 5 or 6 feet, maybe bigger. And so there's 3 points. So Gavin has a little fish that he's going to surf. And I have a almost 8-foot board that I will be surfing. That's basically a hybrid board. That's what I ride mostly now. It's a board that paddles easy, turns easy, but goes fast and can handle 3-foot waves as well as 10-foot waves. And so I'm hoping to have a good time, but Gavin and I are both in pretty good shape, but both of us have our stiffnesses. He is still not moving so well. Like he has maybe a torn labrum. So I got to talk to him this morning here in a few minutes and see what we can do in the next week or so, have him swim more and maybe work a little less. And I've been promising him a surf trip for the past 8 or 10 years since my mom's house sold and we came into a little bit of money. She never had that much money because she was a working woman, right? And my dad did not give us too much. Dad, you're a good guy and all, but you didn't help out too much. But I love you, Dad. Like a lot of guys, he had his own agenda. He was a very accomplished guy. He was a decent surfer, and my older sister said he was a good dancer, and he ended up getting his unlimited master's papers, which meant that he could pilot, he could captain any ship in the ocean, but he had his own agenda. And I found out 10 years ago that he was abusive. I used to idolize him basically, right? Because he was a surfer and he knew a lot of the guys that were pioneers that took me under their wing when I first started surfing bigger waves like Buzzy Trent and Jose Angel and the California guys he knew as well. And he also knew the local Hawaiian guys like George Dowling, Wally Forsyth, and I got to meet the Duke. And so I'll have to get a picture of my shaking hands with the Duke when I won his surf contest when he was still alive in 1967, which is great. And there's various things that I'm very happy that I was able to experience in life that I can look back on with pride. But so Dad didn't, give us much money when I was growing up, but because of our ability my ability to fish was helpful because I could bring home food for the family. Sometimes it was rice and beans if I didn't bring some fish home.
I want to make sure I ask one or two last questions, and I know you have to get on. Many people who are listening to this podcast, you're still excited about your upcoming trip to Mexico to surf Scorpion Bay. You're still out there, you're still charging. I want to ask you this question. So if someone came to you and said, Jock, I think I am too old to start something new,
right?
What would you say to them?
I tell them I have very stock responses because I hear it a lot. Oh, it's too hard for me to learn to surf. Can you ride a bicycle? I say, can you dance? Well, then you can surf. Can you stand on one leg? You show me standing on one leg. So I encourage these people to start off slowly. Nowadays, they have great soft top boards, the Costco boards that are $150. They don't hurt, if they hit you, but they paddle easily. And so I tell these people, no, you can learn to surf. Or if you think you're too old, well, maybe, if you need personal assistance, my son and I can, take you to a spot where there's little teeny rollers on the other side of the island. There's places like Waikiki that are not crowded. And so we can teach you. And the surf learning business is very, very prolific nowadays. But luckily for us that like to surf, and we hate to see 25 people paddling on it once on their learning boards, that if the surf is over 3 or 4 feet, then they're not out there. But anyways, so what do I say to people that are saying to me that, oh, I'm too old, I can't learn this, I can't learn that? I say, no, it's possible you can. Here, just do a couple of exercises. Like I think Jack LaLanne, he was telling somebody who was sitting, a reporter, I don't know if I can still learn to exercise. And Jack says, yes, you can right now. Stand up out of your chair. Okay, sit back down. Stand up out of your chair. So you just start and you work your way in. And if you're near a body of water, swimming is wonderful for the neutral gravity, the stretching. There's almost nothing that swimming can't help as far as recuperating. But for you, I'm going to send you some of these. We can call them drugs, but they're not drugs. They're herbs.
Yeah. I'm excited to try these herbs.
Yeah. So,
and Jock, just maybe last question for you.
Okay.
Imagine there's a billboard somewhere on a major road in Hawaii, maybe Highway 83, and there's a billboard on that, and you could leave any message for people to read as they're driving down Oʻahu. What would that message say?
On Oʻahu, say, if they allowed billboards.
Oh, right. Good point. Yes. Okay. In an imaginary world, if they did allow billboards, yes.
There's signage. 100 years ago, the wives of some of the important people in town said, we don't want billboards over here. And so they pressured their husbands to enact legislation that we would never have billboards in Hawaii. I would say something that would be very much like, what was it? Bobby Ferry's advice, don't worry, be happy. But yeah, I would say Rachel Carson wrote this wonderful book. It was mostly about raising her grandnephew, and it was called A Sense of Wonder. So I would say, be curious, be capable, something like that. But I would say, read Yvon Chouinard's book, Let My People Go Surfing.
There we go.
He, as a businessman and as a family man and as a surfer and a mountain climber, there's a great book that I saw when I was with Pia, waiting at the ferry building, getting ready to go back to Berkeley to her friend's house. And it was called Surfing and Climbing in California in the 50s. And it had a couple of great shots for the Yosemite guys. But and it had a great picture of Yvon Chouinard when he was a young man. But I gave it at Patagonia. But anyways, it was very good to have talked with you, Kush. And
thank you so much. That's it, folks. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Ageless Athlete podcast. I hope you enjoyed this show just as much as I enjoyed creating and producing it. Whether you are an athlete looking to push your limits or someone striving to maintain a healthy, active lifestyle as you age, there is always something new to learn. From Ageless Athlete, we bring you a fresh episode each and every week. If you liked what you heard, we would love it if you would take a moment to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an update. And if you really liked what you heard, please leave us a review, crush those 5 stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever else you listen to your podcasts. It helps us reach more people who are passionate about staying strong and resilient, no matter their age. Don't forget to visit our website and leave your email so I can send you occasional insights, stories, and tips to keep you inspired and motivated on your journey. You can also follow us on Instagram at Ageless Athlete Podcast and on YouTube at Ageless Athlete Podcast as well for even more great content. All of these links are available on the show notes for this episode. This show is entirely produced by me, Kush Khandelwal, based out of California with the help of my trusted adventure pup, Roger. Until next time, keep challenging yourself. Keep pushing those limits. Stay mentally and physically fit. Continue doing what you love to do. And my friends, stay ageless. Friends, this is not an ad. This is just a quick message to those amongst us who are listening to Ageless Athlete podcast for the first time. I would love it if you would hit subscribe and follow on your favorite podcast app, whether it's Apple Podcast or Spotify or Stitcher or Overcast or what have you. We bring you stories and routines and other inspiration from elites in the world of the best outdoor sports. In each episode, you will find how these athletes stay connected to the outdoors, maintain peak performance, and continue to thrive as they age. I encourage you to look through Brad episodes and listen to a couple and see if they resonate. And then, come back next week. We release an episode each week. And I am really inspired to bring you some of the best stories from the world of the outdoors. Okay, back to the show.